unlike previous videos, I'm going to record this one live. So it's going to be a little bit different than what we've done before. Now I'm looking at pages 18 through 25 in the code that we're going to work with here. It's a fair bit of code, but it actually is very simple in construct. Well, when I say very simple, I mean there's a lot of code, but it only does a few different things. Now, we'll start with the UML diagram again. And what Drake is doing is he's building up the Beetle class. The Beetle class is going to represent a little bug that we put together by rolling dice. There is a popular game out there that follows very similarly to the game we're implementing. You can do some research and figure out what it is. Now, if we look at the UML diagram, we can see once again there's a bunch of fields and a bunch of methods. Of course, the code for the Beetle class is currently empty. And in fact, I might say this is going to be a representation of a bug. What does he say? Well, I don't know. My name is Matt Jaded, and this is, when is this? This would be 2009-08-30. So, what I need to do is fill in the Beetle class, and I'm going to do that by starting with the UML diagram, because the UML diagram is supposed to provide me with a template for the way things in the class go together. So for example, I might have private boolean body. And in fact, I'm going to have a field for every one of the fields in the UML diagram. I want them all to be private because I don't want them to be accessible to anyone outside of this instance. So that means that the only way to modify these is through a mutator, a set method, and the only way to get their values is with a get method or access. So private int eyes, private int feelers. Those are going to be a number of eyes, a number of feelers, whereas the Boolean tells us it does or does not have a body. Likewise, private Boolean head, private int legs, private int tail. Now I've been accused of pounding on my keyboards. You can decide from this recording if that's true. Let's see. Now, Peter provides a lot of comments for his code. I'm going to encourage you in your code to add that. But this will be a representation of the parts of a beetle that we are constructing. Alright, now, like I said, in the text there is a comment for every single one of these. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to jump ahead essentially to page 23, figure 122. And that's because the first method I'm going to write is the Beetle constructor, which is public. It does not return anything, and it has no parameters. Now, on page 19, the only line of code in here is body equals. Well, let's be consistent with the previous section. I'm going to say this.body equals false. All right, in the last section, we actually saw a constructor where we used this. It is not strictly necessary. I will try and do that whenever I'm referring to an instance variable or a field for consistency's sake. So when we first create a new beetle, it does not have a body. Right? We're playing a game. It's not a real beetle. It's a little plastic thing that we're assembling, so we don't yet have a body. The number of eyes we have is 0. The number of feelers that we have is also 0. Watch this. I'm going to line everything up neatly. Is that necessary? No. This dot head, do we have a head? No. This dot legs, how many legs do we start off with? 0. And this dot tail, do we start off with a tail? Is that supposed to be a... No, that's supposed to be a Boolean. You guys are supposed to catch that because we're pair programming. Boolean. All right. Lining up things neatly. I personally like to line the code up that way. I find it makes it easier to read. You might not, in which case you won't do that. So we start off without a tail. At the start, we have no parts for our Beetle. Beetle with a capital B. Now, why did I do this? Why did I change the order of the code in the book? Well, if the UML diagram tells me there are all these fields, a good constructor will initialize every single one of them. All right. So if I have a field, there should be a line in my constructor that initializes it to some value. If body is a Boolean, the constructor should set it to either true or false. If it's an integer, then the constructor should set that set a value for that integer. It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 42, it could be a billion, million. Although we'll learn more about integers and realize why it can't be a billion, million. But my point is, there should be a line in your constructor, one line in your constructor for every single field. All right. So that takes us through, essentially through page 19, and it takes us on to the next part.